Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our presentation on next steps for post-18. I know some of our students are finding quite overwhelming that we're already beginning to talk about what happens when they do leave, and getting to this point actually has come quite quickly. I hope our students got a lot out of today and the programme we put together. Obviously, we do try and look at all different avenues for students. So today they had alumni students from the past who've had a range of different journeys from going to university to apprenticeships to degree apprenticeships. They've had presentations from Ask Apprenticeships in terms of how to look for those apprenticeships and how to prepare themselves. They've also had presentations from local universities as well. So we started the process now in looking at post-18 options, and our goal and our aim really is to expose students to the wide range of options they do have when they leave. Obviously, if they are choosing to go to university, that process does start early, and I will be explaining a bit more about that, and also Carolyn will be as well, explaining the different steps as well. But obviously what we will do throughout the year is have a number of visitors, have a number of visits, in order for students to get that experience of the different options as well. So a couple of things we've got upcoming is we've got a visit to Sunderland University, which a lot of our students I know have signed up for. We have a visit to Durham University, and we've had one to Newcastle already. And we've also got a visit to the UCAS convention at Newcastle. And what happens is they have a wide range of people representing wide range of careers, universities, apprenticeships, and students can go around the different stalls during the morning and talk to the people in the know, and get more information as well. We do recognise that it is a really daunting time to think about what happens next, and we'll do everything we can to reassure students that the pressure's not there, and that they don't need to make concrete decisions, just to have some options, and it's okay actually to change your mind even to the last minute of getting those results as well. So the main programme we use in school is UniFrog. You can also have access to UniFrog as a one-stop programme to look at different careers. And our students are actually encouraged to use this programme throughout the school. And UniFrog looks at a wide range of options, but also asks students to reflect on the skills and interests that they have, and tries to pinpoint them in the direction that they might actually want to go to as well. So in a lot of our personal development sessions, which are really important that students do attend, is we will be looking more at careers and the different options as well. And obviously it was really important that they were in school today to start that process, and to get that grounding and that basis as well. So once students click into this, or yourself, if that's what you want to, if you want to look at as well, you will see there's loads of different options they can look at. They can look at UK universities, they can look at US universities. If they want to go on to further education, or if they want to go to local colleges, they can look at those courses as well, and they can look at the range of apprenticeships that are actually out there currently, and they can get an idea of the types of apprenticeships that are out there for options. So once they actually click into that, okay, they can narrow down their searches. So what they can do is they can say, right, I want to stay local for an apprenticeship, and they can have a look at what different apprenticeships are actually out there, and that gives them this idea of what organisation, what businesses are out there as well, and they might come across something they've not actually considered. It's also a tool for students to create a CV, and again that's part of our personal development programme, that students have a CV to use. Now the good thing about UniFrog is even when students leave the school, they will still have access to this. So they have been uploading information when they went on work experience, which was a fantastic opportunity. They actually uploaded all the information to this. Those people who did go also got references from those work placements as well. So it is a database. It stores all of the students' information, and it gathers all of the different insights and all the different experiences they've had over the last 2 years. For this year group, it's 3 years because they used it in year 11 as well. UniFrog also gives students an opportunity to begin to research universities, and this tool is really good because what it does do is it looks at students different ranges of what they could achieve. Now, a lot of the students will start to talk about predicted grades and UCAS grades, and the mock exams which are coming up next week are one of the ways in which we predict students' grades, but also give them the UCAS grade. So when you get your progress report for your child, you will see a predicted grade and a UCAS grade. UCAS grades are often aspirational. Okay, so sometimes there might be one grade above their predicted grade, and that'll be the maximum grade which we think currently the student can achieve and has shown us that they can achieve. It's all to do with evidence, and that we wouldn't predict higher grades if we don't think students could actually achieve them, because one, we are monitored by universities in terms of the accuracy of our UCAS grades, but also we're not doing students any favours by them getting offers for universities that we don't think eventually they would be able to succeed and to achieve in order to enrol in there within September. So students can also, like I say, use this for UK universities. They would put in their UCAS grades, which staff will be giving them, and then it shows them aspirational universities, solid universities and safe universities. And when students come to do their UCAS application, they will choose 5 universities, which eventually, hopefully, they'll get all the offers for all 5, and then what they will do is they will make a firm choice and an insurance choice. The firm choice is the choice that they've chosen as their #1 choice to attend, and their insurance choice is if they don't get the grades in order to make that firm choice. So it's really, really important that students are looking at a range of universities. All of their universities should not all be offers of A's. If they predicted those, it should be a range, should be A, B or 3 C's, so they've got something to fall back on, but they're also it's really important that they're happy to go to their second choice as well. So one of the things you can do as a parent, as a carer, is to sit down with your child and have a look. If they're thinking about university, have a look at the different universities that meet their UCAS grades and which ones they could actually go to and which courses are out there as well. And it's really, really important you look at the courses, because courses really differ from university to university. The main thing within the UCAS application, and actually UCAS applications have actually changed this year, so if you've had previous children through the system, they are making adaptations, and even more so next year. The one thing they've remained the same as that personal statement, but the ownership on the personal statement and the focus on the personal statement has become even more prominent this year. The personal statement is basically the student telling the university why they should be given an offer to study at that university and what they've got to offer. Our students have been given a wide range of experience. They use an app called Cloodle, where they're logging their personal development, their personal experiences, and that's what the universities want to see. They want to see, yes, they're getting the grades, but what have they done in addition? Do they actually know the subject they're going to study? Have they done that wider reading? Have they gone out and gone beyond their studies? Have they got work experience? Some courses actually have limits on the amount of work experience that students should have been involved in, and if they don't have that, then obviously they won't be being made an offer to get onto that course as well. So within the personal statement, often students find this really difficult, because often writing about yourself they do find hard, and they'll say, I've not done anything, but it's not until you say, well, actually have you done this and you've done that, and to include that as well. But they write it straight into Unifrog, and Unifrog break it down for them, and they break it down into sections. Okay, so you've got section 1, why do they want to study this subject? Often it's the most difficult one. Then they've got section 2, what have they done in order to make sure that they are suitable to study the subject, and then what have they done outside of their studying. Okay, and it's around about 4,000 characters that then gets copy and pasted into their UCAS form. Okay, so this is the tool that we use to encourage students to write it. There'll be a huge process in checking and helping and supporting the students, but if they're talking about their personal statement and their frustrations and they don't know what to write, really do encourage them to use the Unifrog tool, and we will be also during the personal development sessions. And the good thing about Unifrog is they can then send it through Unifrog to their tutor will look at it and they'll look over it as well. Okay, so as I've said before, one of the big things universities and employers are looking for is what other stuff they have done. Okay, it's a competitive market out there in terms of apprenticeships. It is a competitive market in terms of the universities, and some universities course, so it's making use of different opportunities. And again, UniFrog allows students to do that. There is personality profiles, there's careers, there's subjects, there's webinars, all these things they can talk about in their personal statement. Often students will struggle with a personal statement or an application when they've done nothing, when they've not developed other skills. Now our year 12s have done a personal development hour, they've done a leadership hour, they've been involved in a leadership qualification as well. So that's all the different types of things. Often these things students don't see what the benefit is. They think, I've just come here to study, I've just come to get my A-levels and BTECs, but actually attending days like today, it's all that type of thing that's important in order to put down in CVs, to also put down in personal statements on application forms, but personal statements on UCAS. So we'd really ask you to encourage your children to attend all the different days that we do put on, and also the enrichment week that's coming on as well. Again, that's something else they can put within their statement. So in terms of references, so regardless whether a student is going to university or whether they're going into a job or whether they're going to an apprenticeship, we will write a reference. If they are going to university, the one thing that they ask for universities is a reference, and this is the part of the process that's actually changed this year. So in the past, it used to just be a one long reference that we used to write, and we used to get the views of every subject that students actually studied. This time, it is now 3 boxes. The first box gives a context of our school. It gives a context of how we only offer 3 A-levels. That's not a disadvantage, but they want to know that context of how the students made their choices and how we become our predicted grades. The second box is extenuating circumstances. So this is the box where we put any information in which might have impacted a student during their time studying either for their GCSEs or for their A-levels. And Miss Surtees will be writing this box, and she has very good relationships with all of our students, meets a lot of them regularly, and she will also be exploring that box with students where we can write something in there to explain the greater context of something that may have affected their studies during the time. The final box is written by myself, but what I do is I ask subject staff to give us an academic subject reference. So in the final box, the universities want to know, for example, where they stand within their class, how have they been doing within assessments, what particular assessment have they done well on, what did they do in their mock exams, how did we create that paper. It's very much changed from me commenting on students' personality and their kindness and their compassion to more to do with their academic rigour and what they've done in addition outside of that lesson to contribute to that subject and their skills as well. Okay. The other thing is predicted grades. So we have to submit predicted grades, as I've already said to you, our UCAS grades, and that we will list them on that application, and it was the offers, they are made based on those grades. Okay. The grades themselves are informed grades. Okay, all of our teachers are well informed on how to make UCAS grades, have been doing UCAS grades for a long time as well, and they will be honest. Okay, if a student is not happy with a UCAS grade, we do give them an opportunity in the assessment week in October before we send the final applications off in order to improve it. Okay, but if we don't have any evidence, for example, if we give a UCAS grade of a B, but the student says I'll need an A, but we've never had evidence of an A, then we wouldn't be given a UCAS grade of an A as well. And we make that very clear to students as well. We're very realistic, and we're very realistic in the sense that we know universities would eventually, if they don't achieve that grade, would not allow them into the university in any case. Now you can talk about the predicted grades and UCAS grades at the Parents' Evening, which is coming up on the 23rd of June. You will be receiving more information about that shortly as well. But obviously students will be aware of what universities they should be looking at and what grades they will be achieving as well. So for some of our students who said the first year doesn't count, the first year does count here, and what they've done throughout the year 12 is mostly the basis of those predicted grades, because they've got to be sent off way before obviously students sit their A levels in the summer. So we do have a clear process for UCAS. We have all students will register under us, so what we do is we track those students as well, and they will make their first personal statement draft by the 7th of July. So that's what personal development will all be about. All students will make a personal statement regardless whether they're going to university or not, and that's because a lot of applications these days, as you will know, and CVs do ask for a personal statement on them. Once it's been checked a couple of times, the personal statement, they will complete the form. Then the student will then make an appointment with Mrs. Brown, who'll go through the application to make sure everything's accurate. So for example, they have added the right qualifications at the right level, or they've ticked the right box in terms of access or fee code for university finances. They will then pay and send themselves, and that will come to us. Now what we do is we aim to process all applications within a 2-week process. We need to make sure they're accurate. We don't want to rush them, and we want to make sure obviously students are applying for the right universities as well, and that's something that we'll check with them as well. Obviously there is some other important deadlines. So if your child is applying to Oxbridge or as a medic, we do have an early deadline of the 29th of September. And that's because the final deadline, the UK deadline, is actually the 15th of October. And a lot of those applications will incur interviews. Some others that are not in this early deadline will have to go through interviews as well. We do have a school deadline of the 24th of November, and then after this date, we can't guarantee that your child's application will go off within 2 weeks. The one thing I would say with applications is we do them in order of the student processing them. So whenever your child does it, obviously if there's 5 children before that, they'll get their application sent off before them. Students do get a bit anxious during this time, especially if they are not near the front of the queue, because other people are getting offers and they start getting, a bit worried that their application hasn't gone off. But we're explaining now that these applications can't be rushed. We do want it to be right, because once it goes off to UCAS, it's very hard to then retract it, and we want to make sure everything is accurate. The final external deadline given by UCAS is the 25th of January. Anything after that made, the number of spaces on courses will be greatly reduced, and the person's applicant will not be viewed on the same for somebody that has made that. Now we really do understand that this process can be stressful at times, but we are here to support students with it as well, and not to rush. So if they decide not to apply for university this year, then that's absolutely fine. Obviously they can apply next year and we'll still write the reference. Now at the beginning of this process, for those not going to university, it'll feel as though that all the focus is on UCAS, and that's primarily because obviously that's the first deadline that comes along. But we will be offering a lot of other experiences which allow students to experience other paths as well. And we are very aware that university is not everybody's first choice, and we'll support them through whichever path they do take. So I'm going to pass you over to Carolyn now, who's going to talk to you about student options and also support as well. Please do get in contact if you do have any other questions.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Hammond, and I'm a member of the careers team here at Fram. You've also got Mrs. Spohr, who'll be working a lot with the sixth form going forward, and most likely doing most of the sixth form guidance and taking over from me in advising on their post-18 options. And Mrs. Moss as well, who's currently on maternity leave. When she returns next year, will be heavily involved in the sixth form as well. So we've got a good big team of experienced people here that, as Mrs. Mersh-Roberts said, can advise on a range of options, not just university, but also apprenticeships and whatever else that students would like to do. So students have quite a number of different options, as we've mentioned already, and the ones that they're probably most familiar with are things like university, level 3 apprenticeships, which are the sorts of apprenticeships they might have been able to look at the end of year 11. They might have thought of gap years and thought of that traditional view of a gap year abroad, and a lot of them will consider getting jobs. However, there are other options which they should be considering that they may be not so familiar with. So things like foundation degrees, which allow them to actually study for a degree but at a college, and that might be part-time or it might be alongside a job, a much more flexible way of studying, which some of them will find a good way of getting a degree. Degrees with a placement year, so where actually they're studying for part of the time, but then they take a year out of their course to go and get real industry experience. Degree apprenticeships, which is where they are doing a work placement and kind of fitting their studying around that. A gap year, but actually a gap year in industry or volunteering, actually working through a gap year and not necessarily just travelling and taking that time for personal development, but actually gaining real industry experience as well. School leaver schemes and professional qualifications, so things like finance and law, where you might see those sorts of things coming in. And some of them might have entrepreneurial aspirations as well. So these are all things that we can support, and we know that you know, students, we've said to them today, they all have individual pathways. So although there are things that we speak to them all about because they have to consider certain timelines, we do recognise that they do need individual guidance, and we will adapt to kind of suit their needs, as long as they make sure they tell us what they are. So hopefully you've all received a copy of our Post-18 Options Parents Guide. This went out, I think, via Class Charts a few weeks ago. If you haven't got a copy of that, you'd like another copy, if you can email Mrs Brown and she'll happily provide you with that. And that's got more detailed information about all the options I've just mentioned. So the support in school, all of our students will have application sessions with their tutors and their personal development tutors over the next few weeks. So we'll be looking a little bit more in depth at things like UCAS. They'll get dedicated time to do that. They have more talks scheduled from universities coming in. And we'll give more individual personal statement support. They've all been told that they need to get their first draft of their personal statement to us by July, and that's so we can give feedback on them and make sure that they're kind of meeting the university requirements. Every student will have a one-to-one meeting with a fully qualified member of our careers team. So all of us are qualified to level 6 careers advisors. So that's a good, non-biased, kind of honest chat that they can have, where we explore all their options, their influences, the things that are kind of influencing them on their decision, and really get them thinking about the best option for them. Students have actually had their mock interviews already with a whole range of volunteers from local industry, and we are quite happy to provide more interview support for them if they are applying for jobs or apprenticeships, or if their universities offer particular interviews. We've explained to students today that they are able to take time off to do open days or careers events. They need to let us know in advance or they won't be authorised, but as long as they let the school know, we're quite happy to allow time off for those different events. All students that are looking at more competitive routes, so that includes Oxford and Cambridge, veterinary medicine, dentistry, but also things like teaching and nursing and other healthcare courses will get additional support as well, because we know that those applications are a lot more competitive and a lot more bespoke. And there is financial support for those that are eligible for the 16 to 19 bursary. Any costs related to kind of university or job finding, then that can be claimed back through the bursary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about student finance, because that's something that we do get a lot of questions about from parents. The students haven't had their talk on this just yet. We're getting Northumbria University in a couple of weeks to talk a little bit more about student finance and budgeting for students. But this is just a little bit of a rundown for parents, based on the current figures, the 2023-2024 figures. We normally get an update to these figures in the new year, and once we've got those, there will be another opportunity to find out a little bit more and have these updated. But I know it is a big pressure, it is a big part of the consideration of going to university, so it's just a little bit of reassurance really that although it is a financial kind of outlay, just explaining how that works and kind of how students will manage that, and that it is hopefully still possible if they want to go. So, student finance comes in 3 parts. The first part is the tuition fee loan, and this is the money that gets paid from Student Finance England directly to the university to cover the cost of things like lectures and facilities, all that sort of thing. The students actually never see that money. There's the maintenance loan, which is the money that they will get in their bank account to pay for food and rent and things like that. And there's additional support that's covered by bursaries, which is at different organisation and university discretion. So the tuition fee loan, everybody is entitled to the full amount of tuition fee, which for most universities is £9,250 a year for full-time courses. There is a little bit of variation in that, but you will find that that is what most universities are charging. The tuition fee loan purely depends on the cost of the course. It doesn't depend on household income, and it's not means assessed. And as I mentioned before, it's paid directly to the university. You do have to repay these, but only once you've finished your course or left it early, if you do leave it early, and your income is above the repayment threshold. And I'll talk a little bit about repayment thresholds in a moment. The maintenance loan is there to help you with any living costs throughout university. So as I mentioned before, rent, food, but also things like books, student social life, all that kind of thing. This is what the maintenance cost covers. Students can get at least £3,597 a year. That's the minimum, that's the basic amount of loans. That's the absolute minimum that they would be entitled to. But you can apply for more depending on where you're studying and where you're going to live, so whether you're living at home or away, and also based on household income. So this is the part that is means tested, that you might want to provide some details of your household income so students can access more money. The maintenance loan is paid to the student in 3 instalments, so they'll get a payment at the start of the autumn term, so September-October time, just after Christmas and around Easter as well. So they then need to budget that for the rest of their term. And as with tuition fee loans, these are repaid once you finish. The 2 loans are rolled into one, and once you've finished, this is paid back once you're earning over the repayment threshold. So as a bit of an example of what you might be eligible for, because as I mentioned before, maintenance loan does depend on household income. So starting from £58,000 plus down to £25,000 or less. So the estimated cost of living for all students is £9,706. This is based on surveys done by various student living organisations and charities that have worked out what it costs for students, kind of average rent, food costs, all the kind of costs associated with being away at university for a year, and that's how much they reckon it costs. And that's how much the government advise that students have access to per year. The minimum, these figures are based on a student living away from the home. If you live with your parents, you're entitled to slightly less because it tends to assume that parents won't charge rent. And outside of London, if you live in London, you're entitled to slightly more because the cost of living in London is higher. So the basic amount that all students would get if they were living away from the family home and outside of London is £4,524. That's the absolute minimum that students will be entitled to. And as you can see, this goes up as the household income comes down to the maximum amount of £9,706, so that full living cost that you will be paid for families that are on £25,000 or less. So they will be entitled to the maximum amount of living costs, and that in theory should cover a student's whole university term. Now the government doesn't look at how the rest of that money is made up, so there is no kind of, although what they might expect is that some of that might come from parents. We appreciate that that's not possible for everybody, and they don't kind of go out and check. They're not looking, they're not saying, well, that money has to come from different places. So for many students, they will be looking to find part-time work to work alongside university. We've had some brilliant suggestions from different universities in our alumni today on the sorts of employment that's available at university so that they can top this up. And they might also be eligible for other grants and bursaries, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So there is a more detailed breakdown of what you can be paid on the Save the Student website. There's a brief, that table's very small, but there's an example from that website. And you can also use the Student Finance Calculator. It's currently based on this year's figures, but again, you can put your household income in there and get an idea about how much your student would be entitled to. As I mentioned before, universities are able to provide lots of extra support and bursaries. So what you might find is that they are linked to personal circumstances. So again, if you have a low household income, you're entitled to more money because of that, and that tends to be assessed when students apply for student finance. The universities can see that information and they will offer bursaries maybe linked to where you live or where you come from, or families from certain backgrounds. And then there's also scholarships, and these tend to be linked to academic achievement, particular kind of sporting, music, that sort of thing. They are sometimes quite competitive for scholarships, and students will often have to apply for those separately. That money doesn't have to be paid back, so that money is normally given to students from the university. It might come as money, so it might be actual cash into their bank account, or it might come in the form of a fee reduction or a rent reduction or free equipment, that sort of thing. So it can be paid in lots of different ways, but that money isn't repayable. It is free to the student and doesn't have to be paid back. Other things that students might be eligible for, if they have any dependents that depend on them financially, they are eligible for more money because of that. And if they have a disability which includes long-term health conditions and mental health conditions and some specific learning difficulties, they can claim more money through the student disability allowance as well. Now, this money is not means test, it's assessed on student need. So they would need to go through an assessment to decide actually what are their learning needs and what kind of what might they require and what costs does that come with, and the money that they get is designed to cover the certain costs. So for example, if they had a physical disability that meant that they were needing to get transport to university every day, it might cover the cost of transport. If they have a learning need, it means they need a note taker or a laptop, it might cover the cost of those things. So a little bit about repayments, because again this is often a question that we get. Any students going forward, providing the government don't make any further changes, and this does depend on the government that we have in place at the time, but at the moment, from 2023, students will be put on what's called Plan 5, okay? And basically what that means is that students won't pay anything back until they're earning over £25,000 per year, okay? So no repayment starts until they're earning that amount. And after that, they pay back 9% of what they earn over £25,000 a year. And this happens automatically. It comes off their payslip monthly, just like tax and NI. So although the government don't want to call it this, it is much more like a student tax than a typical loan. And actually, it's really important to point out that these loans, they don't come up if you do a credit check, they don't stop you from getting finance, they wouldn't stop you from getting a mortgage. It most definitely is a lot more like your tax or your NI, it just comes off that source and it doesn't affect any other kind of credit scores. And if a student doesn't own over £25,000, if they've not paid it back after 40 years, those debts are written off. Okay, they're written off completely after 30 years, they won't be chasing them again. There are a few things that are a little bit of a myth. If they move abroad, they do still have to pay it back, so that's not that's something that we often get asked. If I'm over abroad and I'm not paying UK tax, yes, you do still have to pay it back, you will still be liable for that. But actually those payments do stop if you ever dip below £25,000. So if they decide to go part-time, or they lose their job for whatever reason, or they go on maternity leave, things like that, those payments do stop and only restart when you're earning over £25,000. So it's designed to be affordable, and the Money Saving Expert website has a lot more information on that as well. So to give you some examples, a student earning £25,000 exactly would pay back nothing. Okay, a student earning £27,500 would be paying back £18 a month. Okay, and obviously you can see there that goes up, so a student on £45,000 would be paying back £150 a month. Okay, and that just comes off source. So it is designed to be affordable, but obviously I'm aware that students also now have to consider other upfront costs and potentially the additional money that they're going to need to live while at university, and obviously that is something that we know students are thinking about more and more, thinking about their budgeting and the part-time work that they'll take on, as well as kind of thinking about the repayment and the debt that they'll be in afterwards. So in terms of applying, it's obviously very early now. This is something that you will be doing around this time next year. The window to apply for student finance is normally March through to May, after the students have applied for university. So they make the university choices first and then they apply for this. But if you do want to look ahead to what you might be eligible, there's some information there, so that they kind of have an idea about what they can look for. And they apply through a government website, so again it looks like all government websites. Once their application is open, they go on, they start it off, and if a parent is supporting their application because you're going through a household income assessment, that's done through the same website. We offer lots of support with that as well, closer to the time, so you can request a meeting, you can have a discussion with us, and we're more than happy to provide plenty of support on that when that's needed. So the other thing I wanted to talk briefly about was apprenticeships, because I know this application process for apprenticeships is very, very different for universities. And actually a lot of research has shown that the more that parents are aware and supportive of the application process, actually the more successful that students are going to be in going forward for things like apprenticeships. So all students that have expressed an interest in applying for apprenticeships should receive a student apprenticeship guide. This is a PDF file, so it's complete. It's like an independent study workbook that they receive. We'll get it via email. We'll also put it so it's accessible on class charts and Teams for them as well. And we don't check up on this. The idea is that they work through it at their own pace. But what I've said to students today is if they start working on this booklet once they receive it in the next couple of weeks and work through it at a steady rate, it will take them where they need to be. So around kind of actually this time next year, when they're ready to apply, if they've followed through this booklet and actually made appointments to meet the careers advisors at the times that the booklet recommends, they should find that they've got everything that they need to know and all the tools at their disposal to apply. So it is particularly useful. It is something we really recommend that students use as a tool, because obviously if you're going to university, you have UCAS guiding you through, and this is kind of the closest equivalent for apprenticeships. So what's available at 18? Students can choose actually to look again at level 3 qualifications and look at advanced apprenticeships. So this would be the equivalent of A-levels. It's the kind of thing that they might have been able to study previously at GCSE. But there's lots of reasons why students might look again at them. Actually, they might want to take a different direction. They might now be interested in different areas of work, in which case the apprenticeships at level 3 are very suitable. It might be that you can't access the higher level apprenticeships unless you've done a level 3 apprenticeship and you have to work your way up. So that's something to be aware of. Students that haven't passed their maths and English yet as well may also need to look at a level 3 apprenticeship, because they will offer the functional skills alongside that. Higher apprenticeships are at level 4 above, so equivalent to a foundation degree. Again, in quite a variety of different options, and study will either take place by specialists, so you might get a specialist training centre depending on the type of apprenticeship that the students either go out to on day release or that come in and actually assess them while they're working. They might be partnered with a college for the taught elements of their course, or for some of those they might actually be partnered with a university for the taught level of the course. And they'll normally look at either previous apprenticeship experience or they'll ask for A-level grades. And finally there's degree apprenticeships. Degree apprenticeships is essentially studying part-time for a degree, so the qualification, the taught element of the course is a degree, and the student is on placement the rest of the time. And that can look different depending on different universities. So it might well be that they go to university 1 day a week, or it might be that they do in blocks, so they'll be on like a 3-week block placement and then they'll go to university for a week. It just depends. And again, they'll be looking at A-level grades or progression from previous apprenticeships. So they tend to appeal to students because on a degree apprenticeship, your tuition fees tend to be paid for by the employer. So you have no tuition fees yourself, and you're obviously getting paid. So you're not having to worry quite so much about that maintenance loan and things like that. So it is a really good opportunity, but because of that, they are very, very competitive. The application process for degree apprenticeships is very competitive. And the time management required is something that you really need to be aware of, because degree work will be ongoing throughout the apprenticeship and they'll need to manage that alongside their paid placement as well. They are still in fairly limited areas. There's not a degree apprenticeships in every subject or in every kind of area of work. So they do need to look around and see what there is and whether that suits them. And once they're kind of aware of that, they need to kind of set their sights on certain companies and keep an eye out and make sure that they know exactly what's required. So the best place to look for degree apprenticeships, we've got the National Apprenticeship website, which has apprenticeships at all levels, and you can search locally. What I will say for degree apprenticeships is you often have to broaden that search out and look nationally, because obviously locally it's quite limited in terms of what's offered, and sometimes they're listed under the university that offers the training rather than the employer. So it's worth just having a little look nationally as well if you are using the National Apprenticeship website. Unifrog, that Ms Mersch mentioned before, has an excellent apprenticeship search that you can use in school. And then you've got specific websites that are aimed at kind of degree apprenticeships, so Rate My Apprenticeship is one of them that just focuses purely on degree apprenticeships. And then looking on from there, you've got industry specific websites as well as our kind of local employers. So what I say to students is get registered in as many places as possible. The more places you look, the more likely you are to find something that interests you. Depending on the size of the employer and the type of apprenticeship, the application stage can cover several different steps. So all apprenticeships will have some form of application form, whether that's their own application form, which is more likely with a larger company, or whether it's a CV and covering letter. Some might have additional online tests or assessment tests. They might have interviews, and they might have a range of interviews, so anything from telephone, online to face-to-face group and panel interviews, and larger companies might also use assessment centres. So as you can imagine, that can be a lengthy process, and a lot of degree apprenticeships will start looking and will start advertising their placements from September of year 13. So students are interested in degree apprenticeships, they need to be ready to go in September, keeping an eye out, registering on company websites or on industry websites, and really starting to have a look at what's there. For level 3 apprenticeships, they mainly start to be advertised from March onwards, so from this time of year onwards. So for those students, they might not actually be looking for an apprenticeship and starting to apply until this time next year. But that doesn't mean they can't be doing plenty in the meantime. They can be gathering work experience, volunteer work, building up their skills to look really good on their CV, so really making sure that their CV is well and good and polished. And apprenticeships go all the way through to the end of the year, so it's entirely possible for a student to kind of apply for several different things and not get anything right until the last minute, August, for a September start. So because of that, it is a process that students find difficult. They'll be seeing their friends who've applied through university, it's one application, it's gone, it's five places that they've applied to in one go, and they start to get their offers back, and it's everything's happening at the same time, it's quite quick. Whereas apprenticeships, for every apprenticeship that you apply for, you have to write a different application, you have to make it specific to the employer, you might have to go through an interview, you might get turned down for that one, you then might have to apply for another one. It is a lengthy process, like any job hunt, that requires a lot of resilience. And we do find that often, again, kind of around this time in the year, in year 13, students start to get a bit put off and think, oh, I've made a mistake. All my friends are getting university offers, I just want to be sorted. And actually they need to push through that, because a lot of the vacancies come online around this time of year, and the right thing for them might be just around the corner. So they do need resilience, and as parents as well, it's important to make it clear to them. We've obviously all been through the job hunt ourselves, so just kind of preparing them for the reality of what that would look like. Another thing I will just mention, students applying for apprenticeships really need to be mindful of how they use their social media. I do say to students, social media is a great tool for finding apprenticeships, because they can go on and follow their companies that they're interested in. But companies can also look at what they're doing back, so they should make sure that their profiles are either private or at least professional. And they should really be looking at things like LinkedIn, which is basically, for those of you that haven't used it, is an online CV. So that is something we'll be encouraging from the start of year 13 that they have a look at. So as I mentioned before, apprenticeships, you will hear about them in a variety of areas, but not all of those are local. So if students want to stay quite close to home, they do need to have a little bit more of a mindfulness about the companies that we have in the local area and what they might be looking for. So I've shared a number of resources with students, aimed at the students today for apprenticeships, but these are some particularly good resources aimed at parents that you can make use of. So the Amazing Apprenticeship website has a whole section dedicated for parents. They have a monthly parent pack that you can sign up for, and they also have a podcast. Now again, some of that is aimed at post-16 leavers as well, so you might not find it's all suitable for degree apprenticeships, but regardless, I do think there's a lot of really good resources there for you to kind of tap into. What I would say again though is that we're always available to ask questions. So if there's anything that you're unsure about, if you'd like to arrange a meeting, please do get in touch with us either via Mrs. Mersh or on our careers email, which is just careers@framdurham.co.uk. So once you've done that, we'll happily have a chat and arrange to just really discuss individual requirements, and the students will all get a meeting on their own anyway, but sometimes it's useful to have parents in the meetings as well. So please don't hesitate to ask questions at any point. I hope that's been really useful. If there's anything that's not clear, just drop us an email and we're happy to provide some more information. Many thanks.